new here, my name is Laura and I'm a certified transformational coach. On this channel, we go over all the different topics I go through with my clients one-on-one and some of the tips that I provide them as well. So if this sounds like something that you're interested in, make sure that you subscribe to my channel and you hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next one. Today, we're going to be talking about habits, how they're created, how to break them, and how to create new ones. Now, when we think about habits, we almost automatically think about all the bad habits that we have. But not all habits are bad. They actually serve a really good purpose. Now, imagining having to think through every single behavior, every habit that you have, you would be mentally exhausted by the time that you got to work. You'd be literally ready to clock out. And that's why habits can be really helpful, since habits are typically done with minimum conscious awareness, like choosing which hand to brush your teeth with, or which mug you're going to choose in the morning to grab your coffee. These habits are so ingrained in us that there's very little thinking that goes into them to perform them. Now, habit change is actually one of the topics I focus on the most with a lot of my clients. Physical habits, emotional, mental, but I especially make sure that I emphasize that habits are, when we're creating habits, we want to look for 1% change every day or when we're breaking them. Because as I mentioned, these are so ingrained in us that if we're either trying to create a new habit or break a new one, it really takes a lot of patience and being kind to ourselves and just looking for 1% progression every single day. Now, let's be honest with ourselves. We all want to be the best versions of ourselves as quickly as possible. But these habits, they're so ingrained and tied to our mental programming, which is why they're so hard to break. So let me give myself as an example so you can understand what I mean by mental programming. I've been told by maybe a few too many people than I would like that it takes me a long time to explain things, which is honestly really hard for me to control. But if I take a step back and analyze my behavior, it's really obvious where I got this habit from: my family, or specifically my parents, and more specifically, my father. I remember when I was younger, or even now, I'll ask him a question and he'll typically provide me a much longer answer than needed. And since I grew up seeing this behavior, it just became part of my programming. And I slowly started to pick up this habit myself.
Now let's take a step-by-step look at how this habit was created. So we're going to break this up into 5 sections. First, we have our programming, which creates our decisions. In this case, my programming was that my parents give me long explanations. Second, we have our decisions, which stabilizes our beliefs. In this case, my decision was that the only way to communicate is by giving long explanations. Third, we have our beliefs, which shapes our identity. In this case, the belief that I created is that people will not understand you unless you give long explanations. Fourth, we have our identity, which informs our actions and behaviors. So the identity that I created is that I am someone who has to give long explanations or no one will understand me. And lastly, we have our actions and behaviors which determine our results, aka our habits. So in this case, the habit that I created was giving long explanations.
Now, when I was younger, my habits confirmed my beliefs that people will not understand you unless you gave long explanations. Example, this always makes me laugh, but when I was younger, I loved the fact that it took me a really long time to explain things because that meant that it was easy for me to write really long papers in school, while all my other friends, it was a struggle for them to write, a 5-10 page essay. But as I got older, that actually started working against me. When I got into the corporate environment, my boss, my coworker, they didn't want me to give a long explanation. They wanted me to get straight to the point. And this is when I learned that I created this habit just like my father, just like my mother, like a lot of people in my family. And now that I was aware of that, I wanted to make sure that I changed this habit, which meant that I have to go back to my programming and see how I can self correct through. So let's take a look back.
Now here you can see my current programming that we just went through. This is a behavior that I learned at a very young age, which then became a habit. But now in this current state of my life, I'm learning from the external world that a sought after employee is someone that knows how to communicate clearly. So now this is a new programming that I'm starting to learn. So I'm making the decision at this point in my life that to become a clear communicator, you must be concise in your explanations. Therefore, creating the belief that people will understand you best when you get to the point. And now self-identifying as an effective communicator since I give short explanations, which then lead to my new habit of giving short explanations.
Now, I'm not gonna lie, this is still a habit that I'm very much working through. It's something that's really ingrained in me. It's very much part of my identity since it's something that I learned from really young age. But as I mentioned in the beginning of this video, we're looking for 1% improvement every single day. And I do that by using the habit loop, which brings us into the next topic of how do we break bad habits. Now that we understand how habits are created, now the question is, how do we rewire our brain to change its programming, therefore breaking our habit? So if we look back at my previous examples, my actions and habits led to a reward, therefore confirming my beliefs. In the first one, my habit, giving long explanations, gave me the reward of people understanding me. Now, my second habit of short explanations gave me the reward of becoming an effective communicator. It can be difficult to break a habit if it's confirming your beliefs. So, you first must identify the belief that you have tied to that habit, and then you can work backwards from there and identify what your programming is. One of my favorite books is The Power of Habit, and the author Charles Duhigg explains this habit loop amazingly. He breaks this process into 3 steps he calls the habit loop. The first is the cue, which is a trigger that tells your brain to go into automatic mode and which habit to use. The second is the routine, which is the physical, mental, or emotional action. And lastly, we have the reward, something that helps the brain figure out if this particular loop is worth remembering for the future. Duhigg gives a really great example of the habit loop in his book, where he does an experiment on himself. So every afternoon, he would go to the cafeteria, buy a cookie, and chat with his coworkers. He noticed after a few months that he was starting to gain some weight from this, so he wanted to break this habit. After some experimenting, which, mind you, took a few months, 1% change every day, he noticed that what he was actually craving was just a distraction in the afternoon. And what fulfilled this craving was just simply chatting with his friends. So I'd love to show you this cue, routine, reward, habit loop in my programming, decision, belief, identity, habit framework. I know, so many words. But I'd love to show you them both together so that you can see how they relate. So if you look at his old habit, in the cue, which is, we're calling it, it's programming here, it's 3:30 and it's snack time. So when it's 3:30, he has his cue that it's time for a snack. So that is his programming. He then moves forward into his routine, which, as you can see here, decision, belief, and identity kind of all fall under routine. So his decision is, I will walk to the cafeteria for a snack, which creates his belief that I need a cookie every afternoon, which creates his identity that I am someone who eats a cookie every afternoon. and then moves forward to his reward, which in this case is the habit of getting a cookie every afternoon. Now, if we look at his new habit that he's created, we have his cue, which is his programming, that now it's 3:30 and he realizes that he just needs a distraction. So that is his programming. He realizes what he really needs is a distraction at 3:30. And then we move forward to his routine, which is again the decision, belief, identity. His decision is I will walk to a friend's desk for a distraction. Belief, a quick chat is enough of a distraction for me. And identity, I am someone who chats with friends in the afternoon when I need a distraction. And he then gets his reward, which is chatting with friends every afternoon to get that distraction that he needs. Now, I know that with his experiment of this cookie experiment, right? This programming, decision, belief, identity seems a little bit too much, right? His seems a lot more simple. But the reason why I have all these extra factors in it is because when we go into something deeper, like weight loss, that can be tied to so many things. I mean, I myself struggled for so many years to lose weight because part of my belief was that I could never be someone who was skinny. I could never look like all the other girls. And because I had this belief in me, it was very, very hard for me to identify as someone who has positive habits and eating healthy, going regularly to the gym, just being consistent overall to then create this habit and this change that I wanted. So, really, depending on what it is that you're looking to create, what type of habit you're looking to create, one or the other may work best for you. You know, it's use your best judgment if you want to use the cue routine reward method, or if you'd rather use mine. But regardless, as you can see, whichever method you really use, you have to really analyze what your habit is. You have to take a step back from your habit and take a look at it from afar. What is your programming? What is queuing up that habit for you? And what is your belief system tied to that? You know, what is your routine? What do you see yourself identifying in? What do you see yourself repeating? What routines, I guess, which then leads to that habit? You really have to take a look at it from the outside in order to properly assess that habit. Okay, so now we've learned how habits were created, how we can break habits, and now we want to learn how we can create new habits. Now, this method that I just went through in the cue routine reward method, as well as my programming, decision, belief, identity, habit method, either one of those can be used to create new habits. I would really say it depends on what type of habit you're trying to create. Does this new habit, is it stemming from a bad habit, or is it just a random habit that you want to start doing? You know, example, if you want to start eating healthy, that's stemming from a bad habit. So you first need to break that habit to then create a new one. So my previous examples of going through those two different frameworks, that would actually work best for you once you decide which one you want to go with. So you can first break that habit and start creating a new one. Now, if you want to create a habit that doesn't really stem from anything, probably doing the cue, routine, and reward method would be best. So I'm going to give you an example how I use this for myself in making my bed back there. So I'm not really a morning person, but I hate being in a cluttered space. I don't live in a very big apartment, so clutter just feels like it's even smaller. So one of my goals this year was to start making my bed every single morning. So I use the cue routine reward method in this case. And now I make my bed pretty much every single day. In this case, for me, I did do some experimenting. I would make my bed the moment that I woke up. And then I also would make my bed, get up, brush my teeth, make breakfast, come back into my room. And I realized that sometimes I would make it, but sometimes I didn't. And what worked best for me was just the moment that I woke up, just making it immediately. And then I didn't have to think about it for the rest of the day. So in that case, I got my reward. I felt fulfilled. And since I kept getting that reward of, feeling like I'm living in a nice, clean, spacious apartment because it's more organized, it motivated me more every single morning, even though I was tired, to make my bed. And now I kind of do it without even thinking. So I would just say, think about both frameworks, mine, which has all of the different categories, or the simpler one of the cue routine reward, and see where it would fall best in. And let me know, leave a comment below. Did you try one of these? How did they work for you? Have you heard of these? Do you like The Power of Habit? I love that book. There is also The Atomic Habit. That is the newer habit book that everyone loves. The Power Habit is a bit older, but since that was the first one that I read, I do kind of love it a bit more. But either book is actually really great. I've read part of The Atomic Habit. I haven't read all of it, I'm not gonna lie, but there are amazing reviews for that book. So if habit change is something that you're really interested in right now and you want more information, definitely pick up one of these two books. I know you will learn a bunch and you will not be let down from them. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, please make sure you hit that like button. And if you haven't already, make sure that you hit the subscribe button to join this family. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.